For the past 6 years, I have built and maintained large vivariums filled with animals, especially one large European one and 2 large tropical ones. But instead of focusing on the good looks like this one, these vivariums are made to make diversity flourish in extensive food webs, designed to make sure that all creatures have a place. And this has allowed slime molds to grow like this, ants to forage, isopods to party, hammerhead worms to fly, and termites to create highways next to ants. It has been a marvel to observe and learn about how these systems sustain themselves. But now I've decided to take this understanding a step further. I decided to gather data from all these vivariums, including all the species, and then code the food web and diversity within on a whole new level, analyzing it, and being able to locate what species are vulnerable, and also find out how the introduction of a new species could either enhance or destroy the balanced food web in place. And boy, we made some cool discoveries. If you want to see how I did this, make sure to watch until the very end. But before, starting this video, you might not have the space or resources to start one of these vivariums yet. Then, for the time being, I would recommend you to today's sponsor, because I love their game. The Ants Underground Kingdom, where you can build your own ant colony. I mean, imagine this, you're in a rainforest, managing legions of ants with different species and combat strengths. You get to build your own ant army, strategize, and even go into battle. I mean, look at the epicness of this. This is like Lord of the Rings. Dodge and bombs away, skadoosh. As you Nordic ant subscribers already know, however, being an ant is so much more than ant wars. You also got to gather resources, distribute the resources carefully, build an anthill, and set up clear defenses to survive in the wild, or a vivarium. It is super satisfying to customize your own authentic anthill like this. I don't know why, with different panels and decorations creating a unique ant kingdom that packs a serious punch, much like you would decorate your own vivarium. And more interesting than this is when you hit level 16 and you unlock the insect system. Then you can hatch insects from eggs and they will contribute to your ant kingdom's strength, expanding the ecosystem of your colony in a way. You can even trade their shells for other insects if you want. And lastly, a new season is coming up, so if you download the game now, you can type in the redeem code ANTS2024 for a super gift pack. It's got 100 consecutive supreme draws and a ton of resources to beef up your anthill. Really make sure to sign up on April 8th as the new season is kicking off. I only touched on the surface of this incredible game, so for all you insect lovers out there, make sure to give it a try. So cute. Part 1. The 3 vivariums. I have 3 vivariums to analyze in this video. I'll give you a quick overview of each. First, the European vivarium. This one houses a vast ecosystem for European fauna, with species acting at different speeds. As you can see, this slithering reptile is hunting on an earthworm in front of a mushroom. However, if we speed the video up a bit, we can see the mushroom starts to grow as well, and then gracefully decomposes. This tank also hosts isopods, spiders, ants, snails, and so much more, with fire salamanders and scorpions as their apex predators, both predating mostly on different prey. However, if the scorpion is still an apex predator is quite questionable, to say the least. Tropical Vivarium 1. This is the tropical vivarium I built when I lived in Thailand. Dynamic and very successful. What made it stick out was the diversity of slugs and the fact that it also housed termites, all predated on by a great deal of predators. Oh, the vinegaroon gives me the chills every time, man. Tropical Vivarium 2. This is my current tropical vivarium, smaller but still vast enough to house multiple ant species, including fierce ants such as these marauder ants, the raider ants, and trapjaw ants. We have already seen some great ant spectacles there, such as the marauders and raider ants clashing for food. Part 2. Creating the data. So now that we have got all these vivariums, I decided to record every species within, all of them, Yes, it was quite painful, and I'm still certain I've missed a great deal of inhabitants. But what has got to be done, got done. I also shoved all the detritus and plants into one for now. Then I estimated the amount of individuals from each species that existed in the vivarium. For example, 200 woodlice existing here versus only 2 salamanders existing here. Then I took up or simply estimated the average weight of each species. Using both these numbers, I could then estimate the biomass, total biomass for each species. 2 salamanders would weigh more than 200 isopods, for example, and therefore ultimately have a larger biomass. Then I filled in who eats who and some other details. This was also quite fun, as I now could get total species, individual organisms, and biomass of the vivarium, and also being able to already compare the vivariums to each other, clearly seeing that the first tropical vivarium had more species, individual organisms, and total biomass. But these graphs are really ugly, and I think we can do so much better. It needs to be mentioned though that this is definitely not the total biomass. It is low because we have for sure missed certain organisms, underestimated their numbers, and it doesn't even take into account the microscopic animals such as bacteria or plants that both make up the majority of the biomass for sure. Part 3. The code analysis. Look, I don't really know how to code, but thanks to my great biology supervisor at school, I'm getting a grip of it. So please don't judge the code. I look forward perfecting it this year for another video. But here I can pick which vivarium I want to graph, a food web for. Let's do the tropical vivarium 1 for demonstration this time. And here's the food web. Each ball represents a species and the size of the ball represents the total biomass for that species of the vivarium. This was of course except for the primary producer, the yellow plant detritus ball, which is the source of all food in the vivarium and realistically weighs more than all organisms combined. But that massive ball would be not so nice to plot here. Then we move from yellow to green to blue to purple along the trophic levels of who eats who. All animals with no predators have a red circle around them. Usually the apex predators have these red circles. I hope this trophic level coloring makes sense to you. Here is another way to look at it. I can also decide how the balls are distributed on the graph. Here is the same ecosystem with 3 clear clusters forming. The general ecosystem, the marine ecosystem, and finally the slug and snail ecosystem. The latter showing us how important the hammerhead slug was in controlling the slimy population, as the only apex predator in that area. Here you can also see the predatory umbrella of the hammerhead worm, quite specialized compared to the vinegaroon, for example, as you can see here connected to the general ecosystem. There were so many other things I could analyze now, as you can see with these graphs. I'll let you screenshot what you find interesting, and make sure to comment suggestions. This is really just a prototype I made over a weekend, trying to understand what these small worlds are telling us. It could become so much more. Believe it or not, but it has already been helpful for me. Part 4. The trapjaw and case study. Trapjaws are gorgeous creatures. Ants perfected by evolution to kill anything their size unfortunate enough to wander near their powerful mandibles. I decided to include them in my tropical vivarium, known in this video as tropical vivarium 2. I thought they would be one of the few ants to be able to defend themselves and their territory from the marauder and raider ants in there. I mean, look at the ferocity of these marauder ants. But, unfortunately, they have done more than that, having taken over and more of the vivarium is under their rule. To the point that I'm getting worried about picking them out. I've seen them take down 1 or 2 ants before, as you can see here. But it didn't seem like such a big deal. But then after 2 weeks, it all changed. I mean, how did we go from this to this? Never has an ant species started to dominate one of our ecosystems to this degree. We need to do something. I therefore chose to look at the coding results. Looking at the biodiversity values of the tropical 2 vivarium, we can see that it underperforms compared to the other 2 vivariums, indicating that there's a higher risk of the ecosystem failing. Then, if we look at the food web of the other tropical vivarium, number 1, we can clearly see that the apex predators are present within their red circles. The Siamese supple skink, the hammerhead worm, the freshwater crab, the vinegaroon, the centipede, the gecko and the tarantula. These are the apex predators you expect in the red circles on top of the food chain. However, if we move on to the trapjaw dominated vivarium, tropical vivarium 2, a shocking revelation was made. 3 of the 4 ant species have a red circle around them. The raider ants, marauder ants, and trapjaw ants. This was shocking, as in no other ecosystem have we a single ant at the top of the food chain without any population control. You don't believe me? Well, have a look at the European vivarium. As you can see here, which also has 3 food webs, a general ecosystem, marine ecosystem, and a slug ecosystem. And if we zoom into the main ecosystem, where all the ants are, none of them have a red circle, meaning all 6 ant species present in the food web are hunted on. Which brings us back to the tropical vivarium 2 again. First of all, there is no real slug ecosystem, simply a marine and general ecosystem that overlaps a bit, which still should be fine. We know it has a low biodiversity value. But now, since these 3 ant species are not hunted on, one of them is probably bound to prevail and take over, as no predators will stop hunting the species that does better than the other, if that makes sense. Let's have a look at what they hunt. Oh no. Seems like the entire general ecosystem is basically hunted by these ants, that are bound to be hunted a lot on if one ant species takes over, unchecked. They even eat more of the ecosystem than the giant centipede. It feels a bit like we are missing this part of the trophic level, which could potentially be occupied by more spiders, no? To save the other repressed ant colonies inside from the trapjaw tyranny. What predators should we add, you think? Let me know in the comments, and see you for the next episode, because this is still work in process for me. You might have an impact in the comments. Who could know that among all these 3 enormously fierce ant species, the trapjaw ants would come on top. And also make sure to subscribe, as I'm planning to make a desert vivarium, like this summer. Have a fantastic day.